students. In this video, we are going to learn about financial statement. Yes, in our previous videos, we have already discussed about statement of profit and loss. So, which is the next statement that we need to learn? That's nothing but the balance sheet. Remember, students, when a company is registered as per the Companies Act, then they need to follow a particular format in order to present the balance sheet items. So here you have the format of the balance sheet. Balance sheet as at 31st March. So we know that we prepare the balance sheet for the year ending, that is on 31st of March every year. Particulars column, note number, figures as at the end of current reporting period, nothing but the amount column. So here you can see, students, we have two important items. One, equity and liabilities. Two, assets. Under equity and liability, I have numbered it as Roman number 1. Over here, we have three major headings. 1, shareholders fund. 2, non-current liabilities. 3, current liabilities. Under Roman number 2, that's nothing but the assets, we have two major headings. 1, non-current assets. 2, current assets. As we prepare the balance sheet, we know that there is a balance sheet equation. If you again look back to your first PU classes, you have already learned the balance sheet equation as asset is equal to liability plus capital, nothing but the equity. So when we are working out the problems, do remember, students, whatever the amount that we get under equity and liability will be equal to the total of assets. So keeping this in mind, let me explain you the subheadings under this balance sheet. So first and foremost, when you're going to work out the problems, you need to fix the format of the balance sheet in your minds. This will help you to solve the problems. Well, students, in this format, there is much more for us to learn. If you see this time under equity and liabilities, the first one, shareholders funds, we have two more subheadings named as A, share capital, B, reserves and surplus. This heading, non-current liabilities, we have a subheading, long-term borrowings. Under the heading, current liabilities, we have four more subheadings categorized as short-term borrowings, trade payables. We already know what do you mean by bills payable. So in statement of the balance sheet that we are preparing, we do not use the word called bills payables. Instead, they are called as trade payables, followed by other current liabilities, short-term provisions, and then we do the total. So here you have the major heads which we just discussed in the previous slide, followed by, in this particular slide, we learned about the subheadings. Followed by, let's have a look into the assets. So under assets, heading non-current assets, we have fixed assets. Under fixed assets, again subcategories, tangible and intangible assets. B, non-current investments. Under the heading current assets, we have 6 more subheadings named as current investments, inventories, trade receivables. When you're preparing the balance sheet as per the Companies Act, bills receivables are called as trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents, short-term loans and advances, other current assets. So this will help us to arrive at the total of assets. So again, when the previous slide we have learnt about the major heads, now here you have the subheadings. So the subheadings are to be remembered in order to prepare note to accounts. It is very important for us to follow the major headings and the subheadings which will help us to prepare balance sheet of a company. Proceeding, assets. It is expected to be realized in or is intended for sale or consumption in company's normal operating cycle. So what are current assets? Those assets which are either realized or meant for sale, or it is meant for the consumption in the day-to-day operation of the business. Secondly, these assets get realized within 12 months. That is from the date on which you are holding the current asset. From that day onwards, 12 months is what is being, the assets get realized. It is held primarily for the purpose of being traded. So the main purpose of the current asset is meant for trading purpose. Current liabilities. Now, these are expected to be settled. Liability, we know it is an obligation, and these obligations are settled in the normal day-to-day activity of the business. Again, these liabilities are held for trading purpose, and these obligations have to be settled within 12 months after the reporting date. So here you got the clear picture about current assets and current liabilities. Students, if you follow the notes, okay, I have given some important points, okay, which will help you to prepare note to accounts. So when we have share capital, you might get certain items like authorized capital, issued capital, subscribed capital, and so on. When you find such items, immediately prepare note to accounts, find out what is the final answer, and present the information in share capital heading. Reserves and surplus, again a subheading. Under reserves and surplus, we have various items like capital reserve, sinking fund, security premium reserve. So if you follow the notes, students, I have given a couple of points. So just go through this. Anything that you identify, then we prepare reserves and surplus note to accounts. Likewise, we have long-term borrowings. Under that, most importantly, do remember debentures, okay, or it can be like term loan from a bank, which is most probably paid after 12 months. Apart from that, we have long-term liabilities like trade payables. This particular option is very less, but even then, if you get it, probably you should be able to solve the answer. Long-term provisions like employee benefits, like for example provident fund, pension, gratuity, and so on. Then we have short-term borrowings. Under this, probably you can try to remember a bank overdraft or any sort of public deposits. Under trade payables, we have two important things. One is bills payable, another one is the trade creditors. Under the subheading other current liabilities, you can go through the following items. As we solve the problems, I will let you know about the current liabilities. With respect to short-term provisions, you can learn about provision for taxation, proposed dividends. In case of fixed assets, we have two important categories under that. One is tangible assets, another one is intangible. Tangible means what you can touch, feel. Intangible is you cannot touch and feel. Such assets are called as intangible. Non-current investments, under this category, you can learn about investment in debentures, investments in government securities, or maybe investments in property. Long-term loans and advances. Over here we have deposit with custom authorities, a long-term loan given to employees, and so on. Here the business is giving loan to its employee, which is considered as an asset. That means employees are going to pay back the money, so it is considered as the business asset. Then we have other current assets. Over here you can learn about the preliminary expenses, and next we have current investments. So investments again which are less than a year, like investments in debentures, investments in government securities, and so on. And finally we have inventories like raw materials, loose tools, goods in transit. That means goods which are on the way from one destination to another. So such items are called as goods in continuing. We have trade receivables, that is bills receivables, and trade debtors. nothing but the sundry debtors, provision for doubtful debts. These things you can remember. Cash and cash equivalents for this students. One is cash in hand. Two, it will be in the form of demand deposits with bank. That is in the form of current accounts, saving bank account, fixed deposit account, and so on. Followed by, we will have checks and drafts on hand. So all put together, we will call it as cash and cash equivalents. Then we have short term loans and advances. Under this, prepaid expenses, short term loans and advances, then loans and advances to employees. At the end, we have other current assets like interest accrued on investments, or it can be discount allowed on issue of shares and debentures. So students, with this, all these subheadings, you should be able to solve the problems. You can also follow the PDF file which I have given to you as a support for you to go through the various sub items which will help you to prepare the note to accounts. Now, here are some quick points that you need to remember. When you're preparing the balance sheet solution, either you can start from note to accounts and then prepare balance sheet, or you prepare balance sheet, leave sufficient space, and according to the problem you can prepare note to accounts. Choice is yours. Secondly, if the question is not clear about any important items, okay, or any certain items, do not worry. You need to make an assumption, and according to your assumption you can work out the solution. Now, when you're preparing note to accounts, kindly make sure that if there are two or more items, then you prepare note to accounts. If there is only single item, like there is just one item, in such a case you can directly write it in the balance sheet under the respective heading. Now, why like this is because the balance sheet questions are only for 6 marks. In order to save your time, probably you can go with this option for which full marks will be allotted. That is, if there are two or more items, then prepare a separate note to accounts. If there are any single items, then preferably show it under the balance sheet under respective headings. So keeping this in mind, students, let's work out the problems from the next class. Thank you.